Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our first forum for world education and art and music forum. And please welcome the panelists, our Roy James Morrison from alto saxophone, and Harrison Worley, bass, Cindy Yin on piano, and Rescue on flute. And my name is Ye Huang, and I'm this and today's I would say the introductor for this panel. Yeah. So it's space who's called this very calming and chill song for this very early morning, and sharing with you guys our topic of the day, balancing art and artistic, also the audience as expectations of what music is. But before that, can we give a round of applause for today's organizer, Marco and Felix.
Thank you for everyone coming. It's actually a kind of reception. Let me just briefly introduce what is FWE. The FWE is the Forum for World Education that starts since 2018 in New York. We want to use the education to change every country's relationship by this platform. And Young Leaders is the one of the part of the FWE, because we want to join more and more young leaders, young people from all countries. For right now, we have more than 34 countries, young people join our forum, and we want to hear the voice from the young people. They can spend, or after they take the education, maybe they can have some issues from each country's education, and we want the people to voice, and we can change this. And besides this, the young leaders part, we have the two different parts. One is business leaders and one is the policymakers. So maybe after we mention these issues, and the other people, other two kind of people, they can make the solution. So this is what FWE do. So in the past 6 years, we have nearly kind of 100 receptions, conference, the panels in more than 10 different countries. Paris, China, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Thailand, or different countries. So we'll make this continue. And this is the first time the education connection with music. So, and also one tip, so here have some juice. It's my company, my own company. It's my startup. Since 3 years, and for right now we have more than 40 million US dollars selling per year. This is the third year for our entrepreneur. So after, or if in the break time, you can try our juice. So just keep this back to the home yet. I think this works. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, everyone hear my voice without like.
Yes.
I'll try my best. Okay. So today I want to just briefly introduce our panelists, and I'm very honored to introduce all of them because they're all my friends, and some of them I've met recently, and one of them, a few of them we met and collaborate a few times. And for flute, Rescue, and he's an international acclaimed flutist and a music educator in Singapore, celebrated with lyrics and emotional, compelling professions in both jazz, contemporary, classical, and chamber music. He combines both elegant playing and also virtuosity in his artistic plays. So he also did a lot of things for young musicians and also young students in Singapore. Currently touring with Jackie Chan, and I'm very honored he's here today because he has to go back after the concert, after this event to play with Jackie Chan. And also on bass, Harrison Worley is a double bass player from Melbourne, Australia, graduated from Monash Conservatory of Music in jazz double bass. And he also spent 5 years in Sichuan Conservatory of Music. He's very honored to attend Shanghai. Now, and also Murray James Morrison is a clinical assistant professor in NYU Shanghai. So Dr. Morrison is a Canadian saxophonist and I would say multi-saxophonist, multi-talented musician. Because he also played clarinets, flute, and saxophone. And he studied with like Chris Bolger, Kenny Warner, for Lavano, and he also served as head of saxophone in Sichuan Conservatory of Music. On piano, Cindy Ling. Cindy Ling is a rising jazz composer, recently graduated from New England Conservatory of Music with a master's degree in jazz compositions. And she's one of the few people who lead the big band under the name of herself and put a concert together in Shanghai recently. Okay, without further ado, I just want to ask all the panelists and the topic of today. How do you manage to balance the entertainment industry and also artistic industry in China, in mainland China? And how do you feel like the situation here or like the industry here today?
For me, well, I've been touring China for the last 2 years. So besides playing for Jackie, I'll try to also book some of my own gigs and perform with local musicians. So to answer your question, I guess I try to find a balance in the repertoire whenever I perform, like songs that are perhaps more familiar to the audience, common jazz standards that people would often be able to recognize, and also I try to play some of my original compositions as well. So it's like 50-50. And then I mean, you have to. For me, I try to read the audience as well, and try to get some feedback. And from every show, each show that I do, I try to refine it, try to make it better, and always try to make it as engaging as possible. At least for me, I feel that the engagement is very important.
So the question is balancing artistic development with. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I guess first off, I'd say that I think that we're lucky, especially in Shanghai. I think some of the audiences are really good, and there's a lot of young people who are interested in. Well, I'm a jazz musician in jazz music, which is really nice because at least in Melbourne, Australia, I guess most of the jazz clubs and the venues that host jazz performances, I'd say the audiences are usually a little bit older. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that about Shanghai. There's a lot of young people and all over China who seem to be interested in jazz music. I would say that I played in a wide range of settings in this music. I played my own original music. I played other people's original music. I've done a lot of tribute concerts to jazz greats and things like that. I always feel that just as long as you're putting together a well-rehearsed and a good sounding band, people are generally pretty, receptive of whether it's original music or covers or playing jazz standards. I just always try to concentrate on putting together good rehearsed sound music, and it doesn't really matter. I find what we play, as long as it's kind of good, I find people usually engage. Is that kind of answering the question? You.
Thank you, Harrison. Yeah, so great to be here. Thank you for your kind introduction. Yeah, I mean, so I'm like Harrison, I'm a jazz musician, I'm a saxophonist. typically don't really think of myself as part of the entertainment industry, although I suppose I am with performers. Right? And we perform for live audiences. Sometimes jazz audiences are playing for like in small clubs, right? And I've been fortunate to play not just in Shanghai, but in many cities throughout China. As for balancing the entertainment aspect with this artistic component. Yeah, I mean, jazz is not the most popular music in China, I hear, right? This is a country with a very large population. The city of Shanghai has many, many people. And so if you have a small percentage of a very large population that's interested in hearing new things, then you get a captive audience to fill a room, the kind of rooms the jazz musicians are playing anyway. I think in my perspective as a performer slash entertainer, I suppose, I think that performers have an obligation to respect the audience, to invite the audience to be a part of what you're doing, to never, under any circumstances whatsoever, never disdain the audience, but to invite them to kind of participate as listeners in what you're doing. And I find that as musicians, if we approach an audience kind of on those terms, even if you're doing things that are somewhat different than what they normally listen to, they're willing to go along with you. Musicians actually have maybe more freedom artistically than they might initially realize. Finally, I'll just agree with what Harrison said. The quality matters, right? So you mentioned having like a well-rehearsed band, right? So there's a difference between music that's played well and music that's played poorly. So we want to play music well. If you do that and you say, hey, let's make something here, then audience typically tend to be accepted.
Thank you, Professor. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Cindy. Compared to all my colleagues here on stage, I'm just kind of new to the industry here because I did a lot of the background things for the music industries. Not a lot, but some of it, because I worked mainly as a composer and an arranger producer. I did a lot of arranging or making scores or making parts for the musicians performing. So these kind of jobs kind of require some kind of level of proficiency. These projects are not always jazz. It's all kind of pop concerts or like TV shows or film scores. These are kind of part of the entertainment industry, and I'm happy and honored to work for a small portion of that. Yeah, so these occasions, being part of the entertainment industry require a lot of work, not only the arranging people, the behind the scene people, but also the director or the manager or the coordinator, because a lot of people involved in just one small thing. So I'm just still learning, still trying to fit in, like comparing what the musical aspect or the business aspect of every project. So every project is a little bit different. Say if it's a movie or it's a business opening show for like companies like TikTok, companies for like a opening of a shop like in Qiantan, and we have all the shops opening and we play for those kind of music is also part of entertainment, but different requirements for the musician. So yeah, it's a lot of good opportunities here in China, writing music and making music.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. So for Ritz, so your career spans genres from jazz to classical and to your own style. So how do you adapt artistry to resonate with different audience and also maintaining your personal styles? So I know you did an album also you do a lot of chamber. So how do you balance each audience groups and also each user side?
I try to find musicians that are equally committed in presenting quality stuff. So if I do find musicians that are that shares the same vision, then I think it's a blessing. And be it classical or jazz. So it's not really the genre per se. I feel it's finding like-minded individuals that loves the music and wants to present it well. So yeah, so if I'm doing chamber music, I will find some of my former classmates, back when I was in conservatory in Singapore, and yeah, just to I think it's important that everyone shares the same vision and how you want the product to be presented. And so if you put out a good product, just like what everyone has said, it's about putting out a well-rehearsed band, a good product, and I believe it will resonate with certain, maybe not everyone, but it will definitely resonate with some people.
So another question for you. So on the way here, he actually mentioned he's performing the Jagger Chain every night in front of 10,000 people, minimum. So how do you balance that? And also like playing the same music over and over, and what do you feel like your achievement is for every night? Do you feel like happy, or do you feel like accomplished in front of 10,000 people, or do you feel like it's boring, difficult jobs?
Oh, I mean, it is a job, but I'm also aware of my role in the job. Our role is there to support him. Our role is there to just to make the music better. Because I'm part of a symphony orchestra, so it's his vision, of this concert that he wants pop music with symphony orchestra. So yeah, so we are there to just fulfill the role. And as for playing the same music every night, that's what we kind of sign up for. So what I try to do to try to break away from monotony sometimes is I will, like I mentioned earlier, I will try to explore the city that I'm in and try to engage and book some jazz gigs and try to meet some local musicians and make some music, make some creative music together. So that's how I try to maintain my own artistry as well as just keep my brain working.
So for Marie James Morris, as an educator and also performer, how do you reconcile with this experimental aspect of your music, like your upcoming album, So Pirates? How do you expect the listener will react to your album? Or do you not think about the outcome of it?
Yeah, so I'm recording an album right now. The question is, sorry, can you ask the question?
So the question is, what do you expect the listeners will be, or what do you expect the album will sell, or anything that's after?
Yeah, I'm not gonna make any money on the album. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people like it. I think the audiences that come to our shows will like it. So I kind of come back to my answer a moment ago. So I write original music on for a couple different projects. And yeah, I think this particular project is a groove band with some very talented musicians from Mauritius. It's kind of avant-garde jazz fusion funk sort of thing. And, I think the music is good. Some of the songs are pretty weird. I've had people come up to me after the show, "Oh, I really like this one. This is a bad song. I don't like this one. It's too weird." I'll say, I don't know if this answers your question. I find that if a melody is strong in a piece of music, that gives a lot of freedom to do other things. So you can explore a lot with rhythm and timbre and harmony if the song has a clear melody that the listener can grab onto. Yeah, I think it will be well received. I hope it turns out good. Thanks for bringing that development.
So, for Harrison, you have performed in China and abroad, and how to adjust your double bass or electric bass playing style to fit the cultural and musical preference of different cultures, also different audience. How do you not think about it?
I don't think I adjust depending on what country I'm in, so whether I perform in Australia or whether I perform in China. It just really depends on what kind of band I'm playing in. And I guess I'm a little bit different than these guys because I'm a bass player, so I'm kind of part of the rhythm section. And we get called for a lot of, I guess you call it sideman gigs. I'm sure these guys do as well, but bass players, we work in a lot of different groups. So I enjoy that challenge of, because one night I'll be playing, in a band with Murray, maybe playing some hard swinging double bass stuff, and then you'll call me for a gig, which is maybe more like electric bass and funk kind of, like more of a funk style. I just really try to serve the music and the musicians. I think that my job as a bass player is to really make other people sound good. That's always my first thought, is kind of how can I make the drummer sound good, or how can I make this saxophone player sound good? Because I feel like as a bass player, if you make other people sound good, people generally want to play with you. I would say that the biggest thing that I guess influences how I'll play in a certain show is not so much where I'm playing it, but what kind of band I'm playing in. And I'm trying to understand what the leader is wanting the music to sound like, and then doing the best I can to kind of get the music to where they want it to go.
So you also have practice other styles, different styles of play. So how do you practice those?
Yeah, hello practice. Well, I think no matter what music you're playing, there are certain elements of music that are whether you're playing jazz or classical or pop, there's certain elements that are important in all those styles. For me as a bass player, rhythm, so it doesn't matter if I'm playing pop, rock, jazz, or classical, rhythm is a really important thing. So in my practice, I'm always working on my rhythm and my feel. Something else, my sound, do I have a good sound? Because that doesn't matter kind of what genre of music I'm playing, a good sound is a good sound. So, there are things that I work on in my own practice that I think are important in all different kinds of genres of music. And then if I have a particular show, which is maybe, I get called for an electric bass funk gig, which isn't my usual thing that I can do it, then I might spend, a week or two practicing specific things for that show. But in my practice, I try to work on just like very fundamental things that will make me sound good in all different genres of music. sound, time, tune.
For Cindy, as a composer and band leader, how do you choreograph your music for different, for example, your band's different setup, formats of songs, classical jazz, how to program music for audience or not for audience?
Great. So far the shows I did are fit into the occasions for like Valentine's Day of China, or like a spring break, a spring festival, or Christmas. So there are always this kind of occasion to bring audience together, because those days, on those days, people are more likely to go out and see concerts, especially big band concerts. And I know the Shanghai Jazz Big Band, for example, they play shows on different festival occasions as well, especially for large ensembles like big band or symphony orchestras. So plan your program according to the festivals, according to the holidays, and make your program interesting, because you might want to start with a very active or upbeat song, and then closing with people can go home and smile, and groovy music is always a go-to. So design your program according to the occasion of the day or the mood of the festival. That's always a good choice.
Also composing, how do you always think about those? Think about the climax of the song or like the closing beginning of the song?
Yeah, so I try to include some of the Chinese elements in my writing, at least for like one song in the program. For example, like folk song or Chinese pentatonic sounding sound. They always react differently than, for example, Dan Jones or Duke Ellington, than other like more folky Chinese sounding melodies. So I try to incorporate some Chinese folk elements in my writing.
So with your work involved mentoring young musicians. I mean, all of us are mentoring young musicians, but also for you, how do you teach the students to find balance between technical mastery and connection with the audience or with everyone who's listening? Do you teach them this balance or?
It really depends on the student's level as well. But for me, it's always important to begin with the song, begin with the tune, or begin with the piece. And I'll try to deconstruct the piece and then put it all back together for them just to demonstrate certain elements of what makes the piece together for my student, and to show them melody, words about reality. I really believe that a strong melody will stick. So with the pieces that I'm teaching my students, I will try to let them recognize that. And then just to, I think at least my role as the teacher, as an educator, is to show them the path and show them the good stuff. Where all the good is subjective, but at least for me, like what I feel is music that resonates with me, and I try to explain to them what this what's the benefits. Yeah, so it always begins with the piece, not so much like the technical. For my lessons, they usually don't begin with scales and arpeggios. That comes maybe at the end of the lesson. So we always begin by playing just at least for flute, we'll begin by playing just long tones and melodies, simple melodies, just to warm up the body, your tone, the sound. So yeah, for me, the priority is always there, focusing on that.
Send to.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, okay, so, again, I'll agree. So if you have people who are performing, they need command of the repertoire, they need to play their instruments well, they need to play with good sound, they need digital flexibility. You know, there are other things, yeah, if they're playing a certain idiom, they need to understand, the idiom, have some understanding of the history, they need to listen widely, listen to a lot of albums and understand the music that they're playing, but maybe I'll take, the second part of this answer in a different direction. You know, when I was a young man, right, in college, I had good music school with a lot of other students, and you kind of have an awareness of your level, and how that compares with the other students, say, that are in the same year as you, or graduate students. And that's an interesting sort of thing, to be a young adult, right, to be 18, 19, 20, and trying to get good at your instrument, and also being aware that, you know, this guy he plays better than you, and, you wanted to study with this teacher, but you can't, because they only have they only take so many students, and so, but if you improve, then you have an opportunity to study with them, like these kinds of things. As a young man, I was aware of this, and your question was about performance, right? So it's like, you know, sometimes people get nervous when they have to perform. And so this was a part of my musical education experience when I was a young man. My sense now is that many young people are actually far more aware of these sorts of things than I was. They think about them more. It occupies more of a mental bandwidth. A lot of self-reflection, a lot of kind of metacognitive work on like, how am I playing compared to other people? How is this going to be perceived? You know, even your first question about about performing in an audience, like I gave an answer, which is like, don't just stay in the audience, invite the audience. But to be truthful, like my focus is on making good music, and that's where most of the energy is going. I want the audience to be a part of that. I think that many young people, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but I think that there's anxiety regarding performance, regarding how one will be perceived among some young people, about what other maybe established professionals in a certain scene might be thinking of them and their ability, how they present themselves online to maybe deal with that or adjust other people's perceptions of them. Because I'm slightly older, and I didn't grow up with social media in the same way, I try to encourage students to kind of focus on the music and not let that take over the thing that's really important. Because I think that if music is a performance art, then the performance aspect is important and the art aspect is important. And then those other business sides, which, just to be frank, is not really my world. I don't really understand, right? I say, put as much time into the social stuff matters, right? But that sort of thing can help you. But really what you want to do is you want experience playing with other musicians on stage. You want to get better at your instrument, because if you do that, it's not like all of your problems go away, but a sort of like natural confidence will start to kick in. Once you're on a stage playing with a band, if it's your first gig and it fails, right, then 100% of the shows that you've done are a failure. And if it's your second show, then a full half of the shows that you've done are a failure. But if you've done like 100 shows or 200 shows, and like this, you have a night and the night doesn't go well, that's not a big deal, right? And you start to feel just very comfortable doing that. And if you practice your instrument and you play a lot, then you're far less likely to play poorly, because you're musically in good shape. And so in conversations with students or with young musicians, I often try and bring that into view.
about teaching students, technique wise also performing. Because I know, I always quote Ron Carter. Ron Carter always teaches the students, the first year of the students, just play one note, get the sound of one note. He never mentioned about performing.
Yeah, so, so the majority of the teaching that I've done, yeah, in China, so I spent 6 years at Chuanyin in Sichuan. And in the jazz department there, so I'm a double bass player. I play a little bit of electric bass, but my main instrument is double bass. And a lot of the students that I was getting were electric bass players who had gotten to the course and were now interested in studying double bass. So I was teaching a lot of beginners. You know, technically, I was teaching them, you know, a lot of classical music really, because I think to get a good sound on the double bass, you really have to study some classical technique. And I know teachers like Ron Carter, he's also big on that, book called Suman. Yeah, the technical element of it is, yeah, trying to give them a solid foundation and getting a good sound on the instrument. Yeah, I kind of like what Murray said about, yeah, trying to get as much experience as possible. And yeah, like you're gonna have bad performances. You know, we still have bad performances, but well, I still have bad performances. But yeah, you're right. You just kind of have to get back on the horse, so to speak, and keep playing. And you know, because when you do have a good performance, it kind of makes it all worth it. You know, so at least for me, but yeah. So I'd say that's a little bit of my teaching.
So Cindy recently graduated from C, and what do you think you learned in the past few years of studying, and also like what is the core message you want to deliver for future future students of yours?
Well, because in school it's a lot different. It's a lot different from what you actually do in the scene. Because in school you're provided with the greatest facility, the good facilities, good rehearsal rooms, and you can always go there and you'll be ready for you. But in the scene, actually in Shanghai, people rarely have time to rehearse. People are just busy, and you play different genres of music very often from what you actually love. And so for students, especially graduate students like master degree, you have finished your undergrad and you are into this adult, you're stepping into the industry. Just know that you're building foundation, you're building a good attitude towards whatever jobs you're offered. You don't say no at the very beginning, but you can start to say no to things that you really don't want to spend your time, or it's not your kind of job or whatever. But with good attitude, you are prepared for basically 80% of things. That's a good preparation. But always be mindful of your craft. So practice every day. You do have to practice for even the simplest song, and you make friends with your colleagues. And for my future students, because I'm teaching like high school kids on simple music production things, like how to use Logic Pro, how to use basic notation software. Just be mindful of the details, because just for like example, like put small articulations on one note, or making bar lines align. These things are details that really matters. So yeah, just be mindful for small things. Yeah.
Right. Same question for you. As a producer and composer, and as a female musician, how do you encourage others to embrace artistic experimentations, and also while considering the market trend. And also for, because I see a lot of audience are female audience, so how do you encourage the female musicians to keep doing what they're doing, or how do you balance that? The market trend?
As a young female stepping into the industry, it is possible that you are treated with privilege, but just know what your role is. At the end of the day, the most important thing is your skill and is your professional level, and is, for example, how good you play or how well you write. And I just hope female musicians don't be treated differently, but it all starts from yourself. So be prepared to be called and do good on stage, and you'll be treated very equally. And I guess I think in Shanghai it is a good seeing that not young, like female musicians are treated quite equally. And for experiencing music, I see most female musicians are vocalists, and they do have a good leadership on leading a band. I think that's the most important thing. If you do as a band leader, you have to be specific on instructing what you want. And female can not be so demanding on giving instructions, but just be specific, be direct, and be strict on what you put out. And people will give their trust and their good effort to you. Yeah.
So one question just came up to my mind, that all of us coming from different actually countries and also in the study environments. So Singapore, Australia, Canada, and Hangzhou, and being from New York. So we learning this in a different way, and I just want to ask, what is the best way you think we can do in here to educate musicians here from combining our experience and our study experience? What can we do for future musicians?
So I'm just a typical kid growing from China, and I studied a little bit piano as a classical thing, but I don't really go into the classical side. And then I decided to go abroad and study music. So I went to larger cities like Beijing and studied music more professionally. And I was able to graduate from big schools in America. And I think a lot of people like me, a lot of young kids who want to study music, seek for opportunities in China locally and research online. And you can see all kinds of video tutorials, either projection or writing or performing. So for here, we bring different aspects of music, different input music to Shanghai. And I think kids nowadays really have good opportunities if you're coming from a classical side, local teachers can teach you a lot of great classical technique. And if you want to explore more contemporary stuff, we have all the great professors and musicians all around the world located in Shanghai. So it's really a lot of chances to study and to learn, to improve. Yeah, so for the after generations, just really know what you want. And if you're still young, in a young age, you explore different genres and see as many things as possible and choose one path, because the music industry is a broad topic. So choose one job that you're really interested in and really go into that small, specific direction.
Yeah. I want to answer this question from the perspective of a music educator rather than a student. So I've been out of college for a long time, and I've been teaching music for a long time. And there are occasions at NYU Shanghai where I teach music or jazz music, a larger private jazz music education company in town, school in town, where I'll get to see other people teaching, you know. Sometimes it will be in a more formal setting, like at NYU Shanghai, we'll have class observations, or we'll attend talks given by our colleagues. Or it might be, I don't know, like a competition or some sort of setting where students are playing and then other people will give feedback. And in those kind of rare situations, they don't happen a lot. You get to see what other educators have to say to music students. And virtually every time, almost every time, I end up thinking like, wow, I wish there was more of this. Because as an educator, you'll have your own students, you'll have your own classroom, you'll have your own kind of setup, you know. But I haven't had a weekly private teacher in a very long time, and I don't get a lot of opportunities, enough opportunities, in my opinion, to see how other talented educators around me teach. It almost invariably gives me good ideas, like, oh, hey, I should try that, you know. And I think if there were more opportunities, if there were, you know, yeah, bringing educators together and watching other educators do their thing, I think can be really useful to educators, which of course would go on to benefit students. Oftentimes, another thing, like a related thing, the last couple of years, different times, I'll end up thinking, like, man, I wish I had a saxophone teacher, you know. I remember I got there's this really great classical saxophone player from the United States who was giving a performance in a master class in Chongqing a number of years ago. And so I traveled to Chongqing. The guy's just amazing. And we found a small practice room and had like a kind of informal lesson for half an hour. And it was my first time, you know, having a proper saxophone lesson since, you know, the early 2000s when I was in school. And I was just amazed and inspired for weeks, you know. And I was like, man, I wish I could get more of this, you know. And from that, I concluded a couple things, which is like, teachers actually still we need to continue learning from our peers, from other educators. And we should also have other people maybe teaching us directly if that's possible. And then two, like, you know, so education, we all know it in an event like this, like education is like extraordinarily important, right? So most of us who can do good things, you know, we have had teachers along the way in various kind of settings, in like post-secondary academic settings, as well as in all sorts of other settings where, I mean, teachers teach and a musician can learn a lot of stuff that will make them good at what they do, that they can continue to reflect on for years and years, right? Like life-changing musical experiences through the opportunity, one-on-one opportunities with the teacher. And so, yeah, so I guess I'm making the non-controversial statement that I'm for education and that I'm for educational opportunities actually continuing post-university. I think that would have benefit both for long-term, lifelong educators like myself and other people here on the stage, as well as for the students themselves.
Okay. Yeah, music education here in China. What is your way or the best way?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of like what Cindy said, you know, because when you say music education, you know, there's so many things you can go into, whether you're a performer, arranger, composer, or whether you just want to be a teacher. So, giving it thought, you know, like think it's really important to find what you love in music, you know, whether it is teaching or performing or both, and really pursuing, you know, what you love doing in music. You know, I first started studying classical music, and I kind of just did it because my parents wanted me to, and I was never very good. I played cello, and it wasn't until I discovered jazz and improvised music that I guess I kind of found my calling, and that's what I fell in love with. And then I worked quite hard at it because I loved it. You know, music, you know, we do it because we love it, you know. So I just say, the young students try to find the thing that, you know, you love, you know, what instrument, what genre of music, and just go for it, because then it's not work, it's not, yeah, if you love it, it's, yeah, and definitely listen to a wide range of music, and yeah, play electric bass, double bass, or even, you know, all kinds of instruments.
I think for me there are three things. So the first thing is I would always encourage my students, besides taking lessons, to also attend live performances, to go out there and to watch, to a show, to listen to music, to absorb, just being right there in the moment with music that is being live by people. And just I'll encourage them to go out there and to just attend concerts, and yeah, I'll tell parents to bring their children to concert halls or so to attend more live music. And the second thing is during lessons, I would always try to end off lesson by playing like a duet with my student, or something that engages them, not just playing this, not just playing their part, but they're actually the point is to train them to listen to something else that's being played together. So I feel that there's an entry for them into chamber music, to be able to work as a collaborator, as a team player. So yeah, playing duets or maybe I'll play the piano and encourage them to listen. And then the third thing for me is I will get them to learn something by ear. Even if it's just a try it, just, play something and get them to play on the flute. I'll play them some excerpts, very simple stuff, just to engage the ear, to remind them that music is not just on the printed page, but it's also how you engage with your listening skills.
Now we open up to everyone off stage. 大家有什么问题可以问一下 ？Any questions? Marco.
Way back. Yeah, so for those of you who know or may not know me, I'm Margot. I'm from FWE organizing team, young leaders organizing team. And also some of you might know that I was classically trained as a pianist all the way till bachelor degrees, and then I changed major to simultaneous interpreting. But yeah, I feel really resonated with all of you, and I don't really get a chance to interact as a classical musician, to interact with such amazing jazz musicians.
We're not only jazz.
Sorry?
We're not only jazz.
Yeah, well.
Jazz and more.
Yeah. Give evidence about talent and yeah. Really happy that I got a chance to ask a question that I always wanted to ask, actually. Yeah, so given that Professor Morrison said that jazz isn't the most popular genre in China at the moment, I was wondering if, as I know it, that might not be accurate, that many listeners around me and my parents, they tend to gravitate towards more of a melodic, lyrical kind of music that is, I would say, a bit different from improvisation. And what strategies would you recommend for making jazz improvisation more engaging and accessible to Chinese or over, like, generally for audiences like not improvising?
Well, she mentioned me, but maybe someone who's Chinese can start by answering the question. Yeah.
I'm doing something like, I would not say revolutionary, but something needs to be done over 50, 60 years ago. So I'm translating all the jazz standards into Chinese. So for example, Autumn Leaves, Flying to the Moon, Moon River, and all of the songs we know, we heard it, but we don't understand, like the typical Chinese people who doesn't know the song, first time they hear it, they say, oh, it's a foreign song. But if you translate it into a Chinese song, like, it's very touching to our heart. And we understand the melody, we understand the lyrics, and we understand the song. Then we go back deep into the roots of the song. It's actually a very beautiful song and also a foreign song. So they are actually understand and they are intrigued by the melody, the lyrics, and they started to understand jazz. So they get into jazz. So that's what I'm doing. I think it's great for Chinese singing, jazz singing.
What's the question?
Wondering how we can make jazz music improvisation more accessible and engaging to Chinese music.
So Omni mentioned lyrics, right? Using lyrics as a way to engage with more wider audience, because everyone relates with words, but maybe not melodies or just instrumental tunes might not be as easy. What I've done before was to incorporate other instruments, like maybe more traditional instruments into my own writing. Like for example, I had a tune that was written a couple of years ago, and I used so I think it's a Chinese instrument, right? Yeah, yeah, just to have that sort of folksy effect. Or at least I try to incorporate it basically into the music. And so I think having some familiar sounds, may not be words, may not be lyrics, but just having a familiar sound that could be an entry point for listeners to want to check out your music more.
It's a good question how to make jazz music more accessible for the audiences, and it's not something that we just think about that's just happening in China. I mean, people in the West, and I think it's something that's been discussed for a long time. And I mean, when jazz was popular music, it's probably quite different to what you would typically go and hear in a Shanghai jazz club. I mean, jazz was popular, popular music of America in the 30s and the 40s. But I mean, it was big band music. The songs were 2 to 3 minutes long, much like pop music today. So, it was very different to going into a jazz club now and then watching a group of musicians improvise over a jazz standard like Autumn Leaves for 10 minutes or something. And yeah, the audiences, their mind might start to wander, and they might not be fully engaged in the show. But at least for me, when I'm a band leader, I kind of like to go. I think Duke Ellington once said, Duke Ellington was possibly the greatest jazz composer of all time, who ran a big band, right from the 1930s until he died in the 70s. But he said, that he likes to play 2 for the audience and then 1 for me. So, play 2 songs that the audience might be really engaged with, whether it kind of has a tight, funky arrangement, that kind of makes people, go, wow, and stand up and listen, a catchy song. And then maybe play 1 that, maybe you're experimenting into some new harmony or, song length or something like that. So at least when I'm a band leader, that's something I like to do. There's certain grooves or jazz songs that I know will kind of perk up the listener's ear. So I kind of like to balance, 1 or 2 of those, and then maybe play 1 that's a little bit more for the musicians. But yeah, I mean, this is a question that not just China, jazz in China people have been thinking about, but the people all over the world have been thinking about.
Yeah, okay, so I like, the answers of my co-panelists. There's been, all sorts of different fusions and attempts to bring the broader jazz tradition into connection with melodies and instrument groupings or lyrics that are Chinese or are seen of as Chinese. I'd like to take my answer in a slightly different direction. So, you know, I will say, as Harrison noted, that the questions about increasing the popular appeal of contemporary jazz music or of making jazz relevant for modern audiences is a very old discussion. It's one that's not limited to China. And I can imagine being in a slightly different setting with mostly jazz musicians where I would maybe share some of those criticisms and suggest maybe that jazz musicians are insular and that the tradition is somewhat disconnected from other things that are going on. But this is not that setting. I'm speaking to a different group of people, and so I want to structure my answer slightly differently. Which is that, you know, if jazz musicians wanted to make something that was more palatable, sweet, melancholy for Chinese audiences or audiences of any country, they can make that music, right? That music is out there. Jazz music has a certain tradition. The melodies of jazz music is sometimes pretty angular. The rhythms can be pretty intense. They can be hard and driving. The approaches to timbre and sound can be bright and piercing. And that's attractive to, and it's actually been that way since the beginning of the tradition, going back before the swing music era that Harrison mentioned. There is something kind of audacious and exciting, but potentially off-putting about jazz music, rhythmically especially. And for me, as a performer, that's not something I would want to easily give up, actually. So I mentioned in my very first answer today that we want to invite the audience, right? So I can say, I mean, I'll just speak directly. Like I'm not particularly interested in making my music sweet, or my music has pentatonic melodies, right? But I won't be looking for a sonata to have join my band because that's just not what I'm interested in doing. I want to make music in an artistically true way. I want to make exciting music. I want to make music at a high level and trust that audiences in this country, if invited with sincerity, can kind of dig it and get into it. And if I wasn't interested in that, then I might be making different kinds of music, probably to larger audiences, but that is how I feel.
So, to add to Mr. Morrison, if you don't think jazz, if the most important elements of jazz is improvisation, is the proficiency that we put into the performing and the live aspect of it. But if we take out that aspect, there are a lot of jazz elements. For example, harmony or the arrangement or like form or any other elements of the jazz music, and they are already applied into a lot of Chinese mainstream music. Say a game score, for example, the Yuanshen game. We hear a lot of jazz harmony or K-pop or other genre of popular music. There are a lot of jazz elements in them, but they're not particularly jazz music. And these aspects of jazz are widely accepted by a larger audience. So that's something we can always think of when we speak of jazz having a broader audience.
What else?
Some of the audience from the Korea and One of them is also the Hyundai in Shanghai. So before this ticket, when we mentioned it's a reception about the music. So I think that most of you is interested on this topic. So, I know the data basically piano.
Yeah, so, I think my only connection to music is when I was 8 years old to 12 years old, I was taking piano classes. But, I think the question how to make jazz more accessible to the wider audience. I think I'm gonna have a perspective from more business side. So right now I have a career in management consulting. And one of the things I observed in the world we use nowadays is that when you're selling new products, you need to provide your users with more tangible occasions. So for example, nowadays when you're selling your cars, you're not just bragging about the functions or styles of your products. You gotta give your users more tangible occasions, whether this car is for your family or this car is for your weekend trips. So comparatively, I think for jazz, if the jazz world can provide wider audience more details about what occasions that jazz can be an element to a daily life. So, for example, I would be thrilled if I went to a bar, if I go to a bar and there is a live jazz performance. That's going to be a really good surprise for my Friday night. So that's one example. I think another thing for jazz is that maybe it's a little bit hard to accept for like jazz musicals to put themselves on the TV shows. You got to make the power of TV shows. A similar examples is musicals. I think musicals a few years ago they're facing the same problems when they're trying to enhance their presence in China. A few years ago, there was this TV show, I don't know the name in English, but it's a really popular TV shows that drew my attention to musicals. In that TV shows, they did not compromise themselves to the modern entertainment world. There's still performance by very classical works of musicals, apparently. But that show was such a success that attracted so many people, especially younger people, to go to the theaters to invest their young people's salaries in very expensive musical tickets. So I think that really changed the market for musicals, and that kind of history is going on nowadays. So I think that's something that maybe jazz musicians can think about to invest a little bit of their time on TV shows and let the audience know that what are the classical music, what are the classical jazz look like, and what are the new potentials you can see in jazz. Yeah, I think that's something I would like to share from audience. Yeah, thank you.
Quick answer of think about. We are thinking about, but it's not to our power to go to TV show. It's by the TV directors. If they select people who is handsome but has no talent, that's his decision. And if they select a handsome, talented people, which are jazz musicians, they are not. They're really a good jazz musician, but handsome and well crafted and has a fan base. So it's hard. It's hard to just like go to TV show and say, oh, let's do some jazz. It's quite hard now. Or you can do vice versa. Let's do something together with jazz musicians. Host our own TV show. That's what we're thinking about. Yeah, but that has to do with market trends and also the mainstream medias. Yeah, I'm putting out a group next year. Yeah. We have a handsome bass player here.
Yeah.
He here with the TV show.
Well, I won't not a part of the music for sure.
Yeah, like,
For that show, that one of the keyword in campaigns that everybody is about one way.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the one secret is that you're not jumping was intended in the first place, but what actually is the people stay there, stay with the show, is the part of your work, is part of your performance.
Yeah, they are, you know, the group Mr. Miss. Li Quan, Mr. Miss, those are singers. They actually bring some of the jazz elements to their music. So they're pushing music to a new Chinese stage era. Yes, but they're doing a part of it, but we also do artistic side and also do more. And also his tour with Jackie Chan. I'm trying to convince to Jackie Chan use our picture to as a background because he did it years.
Actually, I have one question for you guys. So personally, I'm very interested in like discuss the linkage between music and the mental well-being and also maybe for your brain health conditions, right? So I'm wondering if you guys can have some comments over this question. Maybe this question is a little bit big, but yeah, thank you very much.
Mental health.
Yeah, the linkage between mental health and the music, maybe for your like your brain's health, yeah. Like for example, I used to have music events with NGO. They are particularly interested in like service the old guys with the AD, yeah, like the Alzheimer's illness, right? So when we play music for those AD patients, like they shows the kind of like the relief over their 60s. Like they shows like they start to calm down and they start to like have connections with people around them. So before they are listening to the music, they're kind of just drawing their own words and they have no reactions to the people around them. But after we like give music performance to them, they start to smile and they start to calm down and start to talk to the volunteers around them. So I really wondering if you guys can have maybe a little discussions over these issues. Yes, thank you very much.
Different.
No, you're talking about music and mental health?
Yeah, I know. You're the educator.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of educator. I mean, yeah, well, I mean, what I'll say. It seems like what you're actually getting at is the role of music itself in mental health, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not really my area, but what I can say is, I mean, that's well documented. Music is extraordinarily powerful. Music is also, okay, I guess I could say a couple of things, you know, I mean, music is different from other art forms. It's different from literature, from poetry, from painting, in that it is, it's an essentially social and shared art form that involves space. And what I mean by that is, so first of all, music performance particularly, right, is essentially well, it's a social enterprise. You have people performing live, usually in a group with each other for another group of people. That's inherently social. And it's synchronous in a way that like literature is not, right? So like a novel is produced and then it's consumed or read by a group of people in a different time, in a different place that it was made. But music is not that sort of thing. Of course, music can be recorded, right? But music performance is not that sort of thing. It's made in a single geographic place at the same time with musicians responding to feedback that they get from other musicians in real time. And it's also like enjoyed by a group of people who are hearing music together and also in some sort of communication in a space with musicians who are playing. And that's one of the things that makes it special. We know that every culture has music. We know that music is good for mental health, and then it also has the power. The role of music as entertainment kind of serves that function. But music also has the ability to speak to some of our most powerful desires, like obviously love, right? But as well as deeper things like maybe anxiety concerning meaning and death and all sorts of things. Music can tap into that. Music is capacious and holds much. So I suspect that the ability to engage in that sort of thing, or even, just music for dancing that is like very human, right? And that can allow people to have an understanding of their bodies with other people, like real time, is like powerful and conducive to mental health. I'll say just personally, like the idea of musicians taking music to places where they wouldn't normally go. So I'm thinking like potentially like an old person's home. There's other examples in the traditions of jazz music of like jazz musicians playing on like the streets of like New York City and like, in like poor neighborhoods with kids like running around and stuff like that. I'm all for stuff like that. I think that's great. I'm also for like outside public performance. And in Shanghai, thankfully, there's a fair amount of opportunities post-COVID to do that sort of thing. Sometimes they're kind of small. There'll be like a outdoor kind of walking festival. The Lao Baixian will be kind of like walking all around, and then they'll have like a stage where musicians can kind of just go and play for people. I'm for that sort of thing. Yeah.
还有最后一个问题吗？最后一个问题。Felix，
So I just only like to listen to music, but I don't play instruments. I feel, would you just introduce a little bit of the style difference within jazz field? Because I feel there's a different type of music, but they all belong to jazz. Why I say that, because many years ago, I went to New Orleans, and then I walked down the streets and I heard a sound very beautiful, I feel, and I checked it out. It's what a wonderful world. James Armstrong, I hope I say correctly. I feel that music is more close to classic style. Like, I don't know, that's how I feel. And then recently I got a co-op student. She grew up in Shanghai. And she's really into jazz for some reason. So, and then I said I was actually listening to music. So she recommended me a lot of jazz songs because it seems that she just particularly liked to listen to jazz. And then I heard some of the songs she sent to me, and it's quite different from What a Wonderful World. Actually, she know that song, but the song she recommended me is the music is more like intense, or like it's like changed quite quickly. I don't know, the style feel compared to What a Wonderful World. So I guess that's more like, I guess, the core of jazz. So can you just maybe like introduce a little bit of difference? Is that because What a Wonderful World is more old style, or like the new style is different, or yeah, something like this? Thank you.
I just want to add to that because I want to ask for quite a lot of people around me and maybe for myself, like when you introduce, that was a really good question, I think. When you introduce yourself, you think it's possible to also maybe introduce some monumental representative artists that we can look up and we can research their music. That is probably easier for non-musician or pure classical music or even pure pop music, like listeners, that they can get into it easier if it's possible when you introduce yourself and just like, yeah, just believe that's if it's possible.
I mean, it's a really deep question.
Yeah, that is a big question.
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
I was thinking we can do one more session of that only, because I do have a 2-hour class of jazz fundamental history from the late 19th century to modern time. But just to summarize, there are a lot of styles within jazz style and different era. For example, the classical era from 1600 to nowadays is so many different styles of classical music. But jazz also, and every day is changing. like to this day, maybe we do like electronic jazz, hip hop jazz, and retro jazz, and progressive metal jazz. There's so many different styles. So it's hard to summarize one or two different things. But maybe in the future we can demonstrate with our music to do that.
Hey, Frank, I think I can give a pretty concise. Right, so as Huang had just mentioned, right, it's a very big question. And part of the reason why it's big is because jazz music, which is about 100 years old, right? That musical tradition is characterized by nonstop, constant change and innovation. There are certain things that are core to jazz music kind of throughout its history and in its various subgenres and fusions. But yes, jazz is different in all the ways that your question suggested, and even more, right? I find, and that's exacerbated by, in the 21st century, most people will come to jazz from, it could be any number of roots because, we have devices where the entire recorded history of Western music is available at the touch of like, a few key presses or finger presses. Here's my concise suggestion. So there's an album, it's the best-selling jazz album of all time. It's recorded by a man who created styles of music that lead to more popular areas, as well as to some of the most avant-garde and aggressive areas. The man is Miles Davis. He's a trumpet player. He recorded an album called Kind of Blue in 1959, Kind of Blue. In the United States, it's the best-selling jazz record ever. And it's easy to listen to, and yet every single jazz musician would respect it as a masterpiece. It's as pure and as real as any other jazz album ever made, and yet it's easy to get into. I think that would be a good place to start. And then depending on your experiences with that record, find someone who listens to the music and branch out.